What is one statement every parent tells their kids? Be careful on the internet. In today's age, it's easier than ever to connect with like-minded individuals from across the globe, play whatever game, videos, or music in a matter of minutes, and even the ability to make money online. At the forefront of this, websites like Amazon, eBay, and Craigslist are well known for having the ability to buy and sell items via delivery or in person, where you must meet the individual behind the screen with little context on who this person actually is. However, with Craigslist, you have the ability to list services and gigs to people in your local community as well. The majority of listings you'll find on Craigslist are clean. Usually there are music lessons, odd jobs, and community events. However, with not that much digging, you'll start to see some listings that are weird to say the least. Today, we're going to dive into some of the most disturbing cases on Craigslist that all started with the click of a button. In November 2007, a user by the name Born to Run created a job listing with the title Freelance and no additional information on what the job would be about. Eventually, 3 people messaged the user via email to obtain further understanding on what the job entailed. However, when the user wrote back, it left the 3 recipients perplexed. The email proposed an offer of $5,000 to be a silent assassin and eradicate a woman living in Oroville, California. Along with the heinous request, the user also gave the recipients additional information on the targeted woman, her description, age, and employment address. After seeing this disturbing request, the recipients immediately reported the incident to the California authorities, and not too long after, we started to get information on who this Craigslist user was. Anne Marie Linscott, a 49-year-old woman in Roxford, Michigan, tried to hire a hit on a California woman for what reason, you may ask? Well, back in 2005, Linscott and a man that is currently unknown started to develop a relationship when they were taking online classes in community college. The two started to email back and forth to each other, eventually meeting up that same year at a hotel for 2 days in Reno, Nevada, due to the man having a conference meeting. They would soon meet again, this time in California in May 2007, further cementing that this wasn't just some little fling. Despite the man being married, they continued their secret relationship, and at this point, we can only assume Linscott wanted to take it a step further and get the wife out of the picture so her and this man can further the relationship. So, she decided to go on Craigslist, create a listing, and afterwards fly away with her man to live a happier life. But, as we all know, this is far from what happened, thankfully. She was arrested in January 2008, and while on trial, it was brought to attention that in April 2007, the woman who was targeted saw a Molotov with a fuse that thankfully didn't go off in her bedroom. However, as a part of a plea deal between the government and Linscott, the charge was dropped. On February 8, 2009, Anne Marie Linscott was officially sentenced to 12 years and 7 months in prison for her attempted murder for hire scheme. While there is no form of media discussing Linscott's release, we assume that she was released from prison back in 2021 and is now free. What started as a mysterious job listing ended up turning into a complicated web of lies, secrets, and affairs building up for years until one day Linscott wanted to put an end to all of this, once and for all. And 9 hours away, we have our next criminal, Michael John Anderson, a 19-year-old man that lived in Savage, Minnesota. On October 25, 2007, Michael saw an advertisement from a woman offering babysitting services. This woman would end up being Catherine Olson, a 24-year-old woman that had just finished attending St. Olaf College. This wouldn't be the first time Catherine went on Craigslist to promote her services, but this sadly would be the first time it ended in tragedy. After Michael saw her advertisement, he then created a job listing requesting her services. When Catherine replied for further details, Michael posed as a mom named Amy, wondering if Catherine would be able to babysit her kids from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Catherine reluctantly agreed to the job despite her roommate stating Catherine had a bad feeling about this person. Quote, "She said her employer seemed kind of strange." Later that day, Catherine drove to Michael's house, placing her last phone call to who she thought was Amy at 9 a.m. And from there, that would be the last time Catherine would be seen by anyone. As she walked into Michael's house, he managed to get her upstairs, and it was then Michael pulled out a 35mm Magnum and shot Catherine in the back. He then tied her ankles with red twine and dragged her body down the stairs, put her in the trunk of her vehicle, and drove her to Kramer Natural Preserve in Burnsville, where he abandoned the car. Not too far from the scene, there was a smashed up purse, phone, and a bloody towel with Anderson's name on it in a garbage can. The car was found the next day with the body of Catherine Olson stuffed in a sleeping bag, wondering who did this and why. Later that day, Michael was arrested at Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport, his place of work. As Michael was now detained, shock was felt from his friends. He would never raise a fist to anybody, Dotson said. He was always shy around girls. That's what baffles me. As we gather more information, we see that Michael didn't commit any sexual crimes to the victim, but instead, just flat out ended the victim's life. It was noted that Michael wanted to know what it felt like to kill at one point, so we can only assume that this is the primary motive to commit this terrible crime. Later on April 1st, 2009, Michael was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, second-degree intentional murder, and second-degree manslaughter culpable negligence. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole and is currently incarcerated at Oaks Parks High Prison. 10 years after the incident, Catherine's family was interviewed about the situation and stated that they found some peace and were in the process of letting go and cutting ties from the killer that took away their kid. The mother described the incident in the healing process as the orchestras of life goes on, but the instrument plays way out of tune. Rest in peace, Catherine Olson. Going back to Michigan, we have one of the most disturbing and tragic cases, all for $50. The story starts with a woman by the name of Brooke Slocum going on Craigslist, posting an ad asking people to lend her $50 for some medicine she needed, and that the transaction would be sex for cash. Within the first hour of the posting, the advertisement had garnered around 20 accounts wanting to accept the offer, and little did Brooke know that in this group there was a man, cold, heartless, waiting for his next victims to lure in. A man with the username Hard Mike offered $120 to the woman. She agreed to the offer, but with the request that they would meet at a park and for her boyfriend Charles Openear to be present during the transaction. Hard Mike agreed with the request, and at that point, it was now set in stone. The next day, on July 12, 2014, Hard Mike was preparing for the rendezvous. Now, what seems so strange about that? Plenty of people tidy up before meeting with someone, but what if I told you that something was off about this? Better yet, instead of explaining it, let me show you instead. As you can see, there is a man in some type of basement, dirty at that, putting a weapon inside of his pocket. To some, this may seem normal. At the end of the day, you're meeting strangers that could be trying to set you up, and it's good to have that layer of protection. However, I wish I could say that this weapon was only to be used when needed. As expected, Brooke's boyfriend Charles was present. At this point, it's unclear on how this whole tragedy started, but Hard Mike ended up killing Charles Openear at the park. But to make things worse, Hard Mike decapitated Charles, leaving his dead body under some tree branches and his head to be missing. Once Hard Mike finished killing Charles, he kidnapped his girlfriend Brooke. Later that day, Brooke would be brought into Mike's dungeon. And for the next 5 days, go through a truly distressing experience for not just her, but her unborn child of 8 months as well. On July 13th at around 1 a.m., Brooke was seen on video, handcuffed around her neck to a chain drilled to the bathroom floor, and eventually her hands that were attached to a pulley system from the ceiling. During her 5 days, she would be tortured, assaulted, and at one point forced to smoke weed. All of this lasted up until July 17th, where the cameras downstairs would show Brooke's final moments until the cameras were shut off at around 1 p.m. She later passed away due to ligature strangulation, which is strangulation caused by a cord-like object. Now with the couple dead, Mike dragged Brooke's body to the back of the truck to flee the scene. But before he could do so, the police were already a step ahead of him. How could this be possible, you may ask? Well, let's backtrack for a second. After killing Charles, another couple unrelated to the crime reported that a man in a white mask was looking inside their vehicle. After reporting it to the police, they soon found Charles open near his abandoned car sitting at the park. With suspicion rising, the police investigated the scene, and on July 16, 2014, police found Charles' dead body nearby. After identifying the man, the police soon conducted a search on Brooke's apartment, since the both of them were linked together. It was then Brooke's roommate told police about the sex for cash deal that they went to make with a man on Craigslist. The police then searched Brooke's computer and found messages with the user Hard Mike. They ended up linking that username with a Facebook page named Jot Amos, and eventually found the man's real name, Brady Strike, a 31-year-old man that lived in Michigan and was now a target for the police to find and arrest. The next day, police would show up at Brady's house, and with Brady being paranoid, he already suspected something was up and tried to flee the scene. The two got into a high-speed chase when all of a sudden, Brady made a huge mistake. He crashed his car on Burton Street Bridge, and with nowhere to run, knowing if he was to be detained by the police, he would spend the rest of his life in prison or serve the death penalty. As time was running out, Brady pulled out his gun and decided to. The police searched Brady's car and found suspect Brady Strike lying dead in the driver's seat. Brooke come in the trunk of his vehicle and an assortment of weapons, adult toys, and electric equipment. After this event, the police then raided Brady's home. Once arriving there, they found more weapons ranging from firearms, swords, knives, tasers, syringe needles, children toys, and even undergarments. They soon found the dungeon downstairs. In that search, they took the surveillance footage Brady had, and during that investigation, some disturbing stuff was found on those tapes. In the tape found by the police, Brooke is seen giving a statement saying that she is role-playing to have a true abduction, kidnapping, and ransom experience. Most likely forced to say by Brady, but weird nonetheless. Sadly, Brady Strike wasn't able to be convicted of his crimes and let justice be served. However, 5 years after the crime, Charles Openier's skull was found on March 24th when a neighbor near 6 Mile Road in Kenwa discovered it. Through examination and dental records, not only was it confirmed to be Charles' skull, but what he suffered was a gunshot wound to the head, thus killing him. Then we can assume that afterwards that is where Brady's knife came into play and was used to decapitate Charles. At least now there's some type of closure to be had during this case. Sadly, this wouldn't be the first time Brady had committed a similar crime, and in fact, a month prior to the case, a lady was also trapped in his dungeon. It started when the lady created a Craigslist ad asking for friendships and adult activities. Brady, seeing this, accepted the offer. Then Brady went to visit the woman in Coldwater, asking her at one point if she would like to move into his house, and she agreed. After that, Brady then asked a weird question that started to raise some alarm bells. He asked the woman if he would bring her home in a suitcase. At first, she thought it was some type of fantasy he had and then agreed to it. She reportedly fell out of it and was feeling groggy and ended up coming home back in said suitcase. When she arrived at Brady's house, that is when it all went downhill. He chained her up and tased her for 20 seconds. At one point, the lady thought it was just some type of fantasy he had, but she soon realized that this was serious and she was a part of a twisted man's fantasy. On June 19, 2014, the woman broke free from the chains and ended up cutting ties with Brady and moved into a domestic violence shelter. This is where it should have ended, but somehow Brady got in contact with the woman again and sweet-talked her into coming back to his house. However, when she came back, she was unsurprisingly assaulted and abused again by Brady. And this time around, when she got away, she never looked back at this man. It sucks it took this couple dying to finally put an end to this terrible monster, but at least he's never gonna be here ever in this lifetime again. May Brooks Slocum and Charles Openear rest in peace. Scary to think that this website can host some of the most scummiest people on this earth, and that they could be one click away from completely changing your life. Make sure to be wary of Craigslist postings and its lack or weird description. Make sure to make deals in public locations during the daytime, and remember what your parents told you. Be careful on the internet.